Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today should be the final lesson on microscopic muscle anatomy and physiology. This is an overview of skeletal muscle contraction from when you think it to when the muscle actually contracts and moves. So on the left, we have 4 categories. And on the right, we have the events happening in each of those categories. So we have 4 stages, and then we have 9 components of each of those stages. So let's go ahead and get started on the first round. Sloan, what do you have for the first stage of skeletal muscle contraction? Events. This marker is a little too big for this. Let's try this. Events at the neuromuscular junction. Sometimes we abbreviate this the NMJ. Okay. Sloan, did you guys get the first event that happens at the neuromuscular junction?
Yeah.
What'd you write?
We got a motor neuron fires an action potential down its axon.
A motor neuron fires an action potential, which from this point forward, we will refer to as an AP, so we can save some space, down and axon. This is still in the neuron. Nothing has left the neuron yet. It is all in the neuron. You're basically instructing your muscles to move, and that signal is traveling down your neuron towards your muscle, but it hasn't arrived at the muscle yet. Jack, do you guys happen to have the second stage? No? Grace, do you have this one?
The motor neurons axon terminal releases acetylcholine.
The motor neurons axon terminal releases, I'm just going to call acetylcholine ACH from this point forward so we can save some space, into the synaptic cleft. All right, so now the neurotransmitter acetylcholine is being released from the motor neurons terminal and towards the muscle fiber itself. Eva and Isabella, do you have the third stage of neuromuscular junction events? No? Noah? Nope. Tyler? ACH binds receptors. While we're going, guys, you should be doing the process of elimination here and start to, if you didn't get them all correct, you should start to piece it up, get it together. Binds receptors on the junctional folds of the sarcolemma. Chris, what is the sarcolemma? It's just the name plasma membrane of the muscle fiber. I sent you guys out a text yesterday, and it was in response to a student in my 8th period who said, this stuff is really hard. And I said, it's not hard. Typing up a book report with your toes is hard. Swimming in an Olympic pool backwards is hard. This is just tedious. This is memorization. This is very detail oriented. But there's a difference between just studying and memorizing versus like trying to problem solve. There's not a whole lot of problem solving here. This is just memorization. You do have to devote the proper time, though. It's not going to just miraculously happen. All right, and Hannah and Sam, what is your last stage for the events at the neuromuscular junction? Acetylcholine binding causes a local depolarization hold on a second. Yeah, local depolarization called an end plate potential. EPP. All right. So there are all of the events that take place at the neuromuscular junction. Let's move on to the next one. Melanie, Sloan, What is the second step of muscle contraction? Muscle fiber excitation. So you're getting your muscle fibers excited. You're getting them engaged. You're waking them up. Okay, Jack, you guys, I know you hopefully been piecing it together. What do you have for this one and only step for muscle fiber excitation?
The local depolarization.
Yep. Keep going.
Triggers of AP in the adjacent circle.
The local depolarization triggers an AP, that's action potential, in the adjacent sarcolemma, which is the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber. All right, very good. Halfway there. Next, let's go to the third stage. Grace, what do you have? What do you guys write? Excitation, contraction, coupling. Huh? Yes. All right, Eva, what do you have for the first step of excitation, contraction, coupling? AP, the action potential in the sarcolemma, travels down the T tubules. That is correct. Okay. After the action potential in the sarcolemma travels down the T tubules, Noah, Jackie, what happens after that? I'm going to call it SR just to save up some space. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, releases calcium ions. Okay, Tyler, Chris, what is the final step of this section?
Calcium ions bind to troponin, which shifts troponin myosin to
This is at the largest part. We did this on the very first day I was teaching this. It's multiple components. So I'm going to put in kind of like bullet points here. Calcium binds to troponin. And that's going to says which shifts tropomyosin to uncover the myosin binding sites on actin. Myosin heads bind actin. All right. And the last part, really doesn't need any further explanation because it's all that's left. Cross bridge cycle. We have contraction occurs via cross bridge cycle. Okay, so here's the page, guys. Page 291. You may want to write that down. It's in your textbook. Everything that we just did is on page 291. Remember that your test is November 16th. I just want to throw that out there so it's not a surprise to you. You still have more than a week away, but no surprises in this class. I don't want you to be thinking, oh, wait, what, we have a test? That should never happen. All right, let's transition now. And let's do the very last microscopic component of muscles for today. And that is going to be an overview of cell respiration. If you were in my AP biology class, you may remember that it took us 2 weeks almost to go through cell respiration. It will not take us this long. It's going to take us about 15 to 20 minutes. That's it. According to the curriculum, you guys need to be able to know the differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. and how they affect ATP production. All right. Cell respiration is the metabolism of sugar in the presence of oxygen to produce ATP. The metabolism of sugar in the presence of oxygen to produce ATP. Cell respiration mostly occurs in a little organelle called the mitochondria. When you get around my age, you may have to be paying a mortgage, child care, school lunches, all that stuff. You're like, I can't afford all this. I don't know how to file my taxes. Yeah, but I bet you know what the powerhouse of the cell is. And now it comes in handy. What is the powerhouse of the cell? Everybody knows that. Mitochondria. It makes it cell energy. Now, the reason why we have to learn this in this unit is because your muscle fibers have more mitochondria than any other type of cell in your body. There are more mitochondria in muscle fibers than any other cell. There was a baseball player for the Tampa Bay Rays, early 2000s to mid 2000s. His name was Rocco Baldelli, and he's currently the manager of the Minnesota Twins. Well, he kind of had to retire early from baseball because back in 2008, when the Rays went to the World Series for the first time, he was affected by a very weird disorder or disease. And what happened is during halfway through the game, he just got really fatigued, and they couldn't explain it. You know, this is a professional athlete. He should be able to last for hours. Sometimes baseball games can go deep into extra innings, 16th inning, 17th inning, and players had to be able to play that whole time. But around the 5th inning, he's just like, I can't play anymore. I'm tired. And they couldn't explain it. So they deactivated him, put him on the injured list, and they did some studies and tests, and they found out he had a mitochondrial disorder. His ATP production was very low. And that forced the team to really manage how they play him without just playing him to death, because he couldn't last very long. And he had to retire from baseball early. Now he manages baseball. But that just goes to show how deeply invested your muscle fibers are with your mitochondria. Now, the mitochondria uses 2 reactants. The equation for cell respiration is 1 molecule of sugar reacts with 6 molecules of oxygen to produce 6 molecules of CO2, which is a waste product, 6 molecules of H2O, and a lot of cell energy, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. So long as you guys eat food and you breathe oxygen, you will do just fine. You will keep on breathing and you will keep on producing energy. But as soon as you stop eating and breathing, guess what? You die. The reason you die is because you can't, or you're not making ATP. If you think about it, what happens to any cell in your body that doesn't get oxygen from your blood? It dies. Well, ask yourself, why do my cells need oxygen? Because of this. This is why. Because you have to make energy in the presence of oxygen. And you make way more energy with oxygen than without it. And that's what I want to get to next. You do not have to know all the stages of cell respiration for this class. Some of you have had me before, some of you have me for AP Bio now, and you should know all the stages: glycolysis, prep reaction, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. You don't need to know all that for this. You just need to know the first stage. And the first stage of cell respiration is called glycolysis. For anatomy and physiology, you do have to know this. Now, glycolysis literally means sugar splitting. Glyco means sugar, like glycogen, glucose, glycology. Sugar splitting. Lysis means to split. So you're basically splitting sugar in half. You're metabolizing it. You're breaking it down. Glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm. If this classroom was a cell, and all of you are organelles, ERs, Golgis, so on and so forth, this open space where I'm waving my arm around, this is the cytoplasm. It's just the open area within a cell. That's where glycolysis happens. It does not take place in the mitochondria. Now, another characteristic of glycolysis, it is anaerobic. Anaerobic means no oxygen. It's oxygen absent. There is no oxygen that is in the cytoplasm. So glycolysis is anaerobic. Very important term for this class to know. That's specifically stated on your curriculum. Students will know the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Glycolysis is anaerobic. Grace, what is the opposite of anaerobic? Aerobic. She's in my AP Bio class. So not only do you guys have to know what aerobic means, but I want to put this over here on the side. You need to know what aerobic means too. Aerobic means in the presence of oxygen. Just want to throw that out there. Okay. Now, in glycolysis, glucose is metabolized, which is a way of saying it is broken down into another sugar called pyruvate. And this is when you have to actually take a fork in the road as to whether you're going to make a lot of energy or very, 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 very little of it. So I'll give you guys a moment to get caught up, and then we'll do a quick overview of how this actually affects your muscles. I mean, that's what we're focusing on. This is not a biology. It is a biology class, but it's focused on human anatomy. So I'm not going into the depths of respiration, but how it applies to muscles. So here is a little diagram for you. Glycolysis is happening over here. In this organelle, we have the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It is where aerobic respiration takes place. So in this mitochondria, we will have aerobic respiration. So based on that name, aerobic respiration, is there oxygen in the mitochondria? Yes, there is. And when you actually perform aerobic respiration, when you go this way, when you have glycolysis and you take this path, this means that you do have oxygen. Oxygen is present. This means that conditions are aerobic, and you'll go through all the stages of cell respiration, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, and you will make, drum roll please, 38 ATP per glucose molecule. That's a lot. That's a lot of ATP compared to what you can make the other way. So let's say that you don't have any oxygen. You're going to go this way instead. You're going to stay in the cytoplasm. All this area out here, all of this is cytoplasm. You're going to stay in the cytoplasm. Isabella, you took my class last year. What is over on this side? If you don't have oxygen. I'm in the cytoplasm, but if I stay in the cytoplasm rather than go into the mitochondria, here I'm going to say oxygen is absent. So this is going to be anaerobic conditions. Do you remember what glycolysis will lead to in the absence of oxygen? No, that's photosynthesis. Grace? Fermentation. Fermentation is when you are, it's behind that screen on my right, your left. Over my front door, there's an emergency light. In case the power in this room goes off, that light turns on. It is meant to be temporary in the event that the light goes out. If there's a hurricane coming to Tampa and your power goes out, some of you might have a generator in your garage. That is temporary and is meant to power some of your electrical products for the short term. Fermentation is a very temporary energy source. You don't want to depend on it for the long term because, first off, it only makes 2 ATP. That's it, 2. 2 versus 38. Big difference. 2 ATP per glucose molecule. So let's say right now, I've just been sitting here, breathing, digesting my lunch, and I'm going to hold this book out. I know if you're watching, you can't see this, but just trust me. I'm holding out a book. Now, how would you guys describe the oxygen levels in my muscles now? High or low? I would agree, they're high. But with every second that goes by, oxygen is being burned in my muscles, specifically in my mitochondria, and it is making ATP. That ATP is going to my myosin heads to contract my muscles to make them form that cross bridge to make my arm hold this book up. This book isn't weightless, it weighs something. Every second that goes by, my oxygen levels are going down. So how would you describe my ATP levels? They're also going down. And eventually this book is going to start to feel a whole lot heavier than it did when I started. Eventually, I'm going to be pretty low on oxygen. So my muscles are going to have to switch from aerobic respiration in my mitochondria to what other type of respiration? Fermentation. And this is when I start to feel weak and I start to feel burning. The weakness is because how much ATP am I making per glucose molecule? A grand total of 2. And what's that burning sensation I'm feeling in my muscles? Lactic acid. Lactic acid doesn't feel good. I will say that with movie stars like the guy that plays Thor, he does a workout where he puts this strap around his arms to basically keep the lactic acid in his biceps and triceps. And what that does is it forces his muscles to deal with it. And that's how you get really big muscles, is you force them to experience lactic acid. That really damages your muscles. And you're like, that's terrible. Why would you do that? Because life adapts. And if you are exposing your muscles to something horrible, like working out and lactic acid, they're going to heal and respond to that. It's the same reason I have calluses on my hands. When I touch a barbell or a dumbbell, those things are really rough and they can hurt your hands if you have really soft hands. So people develop calluses when they touch really hard surfaces all the time. That's your hands adapting to that lifestyle. So when you are exposing your muscles to lots of lactic acid, they're going to hopefully respond by getting bigger and stronger. But it does damage your muscles because lactic acid has a very low pH. It's acidic. And if it gets too much in your heart, you can actually get lactic acidosis. And that's really bad, but that's like really extreme. But the thing that you need to know for this class is that when your oxygen levels are high, you will perform aerobic respiration in your mitochondria, and you will make a buttload of ATP. But as you continue to contract your muscles and work out and work out and work out, your oxygen levels are going down, which means your ATP levels are going down. And you kind of switch over to fermentation. And that weakness that you feel, that book started to get heavy. Well, the book didn't get heavier. I just got weaker because I went from making 38 ATP at a time to 2. And then that burning sensation was the lactic acid that was building up because that's the byproduct. Pyruvate, here's the last part. In glycolysis, glucose goes in. Pyruvate comes out. And pyruvate can either go that way or it can go that way. It just depends on how much oxygen is in your system. If you are very well oxygenated, it'll go to your mitochondria. If you are poorly oxygenated, the pyruvate will go to fermentation, and pyruvate will be converted to pyruvic acid, which is, or not pyruvic acid, it'll be converted to lactic acid, which is lactate. Okay. Are there any questions? Just threw a lot at you. Some of you that was a review, some it was brand new. Okay,